Hello everybody, my name's Katie King and I'm from the AI Business Academy. I know you've had some incredible sessions already today, so this one is a more practical, it's about moving forward, taking all of those wonderful learnings and case studies you've been hearing about and statistics and putting it all into a plan. So that's what I'm going to focus on. So let me introduce myself properly first of all. So as I say, it's Katie King. Been working with the AI Business Academy for a number of years now, but really I've been consulting for nearly 30 years. I'm on the all-party parliamentary group hearing regularly about the enterprise adoption of AI. I'm part of a task force, so we hear evidence globally about how AI is being implemented. So I'll be sharing that with you. And I've also written a book on this very subject. So well qualified to help you and regularly training organizations on this very subject through the AI Business Academy. So as I say, what we want to do now is to spend the next 20 or 30 minutes turning what you've learned into an action plan. So we'll be starting by thinking about that data first approach, which you've been hearing a lot about. What's next after that? What are some of the roadblocks that you need to try and overcome? How do you actually get started? We'll be looking at optimizing your operations, including and improving your efficiencies, and finishing off with measuring your return on investment from artificial intelligence. My start point really for all of this work, consulting, training is what problem can AI actually solve? What we don't want to do is do what many companies were doing some years back and just going headfirst in a very tactical way and jumping on the bandwagon of what everybody else was doing. We need to be considering what is the problem. So whether that's in your customer experience, in your marketing, in your sales, you have some issues, you have extra revenue you're trying to secure, you've got efficiencies you want to gain, you've got costs you want to actually reduce. So we need to think about that problem and how AI and machine learning and some of the other technologies under that banner of the family of AI and data science, how they can actually help you. So when it comes specifically to marketing and sales and CX, we're talking about issues around content delivery or opportunities around content delivery. So the ability of AI to scan your website, to help with your content library, to do that organizing of content, on categorization, delivering the right pages, the right offers to every buyer at every interaction. So in my book, I talk a lot about the personalization paradox, where AI is enabling you to get really, really granular. So it's about lead scoring and predicting what that might actually look like. So identifying customers that actually look like your existing portfolio, predicting the kind of people that you really need to be working with. Improving that email communication as well. So this huge amounts of data, turning that big data into meaningful insights and finding the right kind of data to help segment your customers, help predict the outcome of a particular area, and enabling you then to find audiences who will be particularly receptive to your material. So on this chart here, we can see down the left-hand side some of the industry sectors, and then if you go across, you're finding those that are particularly using AI in their marketing and sales, for example, or even in their product and service development, and they're the main areas we're going to be focusing in on. So in retail, for example, the highest one, 52%, using AI in retail for their marketing and sales. And they will be retailers like TGI Fridays, who are helping with that real granular segmentation. And another example, banks like the Royal Bank of Scotland, many of which I refer to in my book and go through in my training with the AI Business Academy. So what are some of the roadblocks? How do you actually overcome them? So another good case study is a Danish bank called Saxo Bank. And part of their problem when they first got involved in AI is that their robot actually had this human shape, and psychologically the guests, the clients wanted to interact with it. They called it Pepper, and it was really not able to cope with those demands. It couldn't deal with the unexpected, and therefore there was quite a lot of anxiety where people were trying to use it for their customer experience and for their marketing. It was quite limited. So they got bored, they got irritated, they walked away and lost interest in it. And really what we're talking about here is, don't just jump on that bandwagon at a time where perhaps it's too early, or it's not appropriate, or there's not a particular problem that you're looking to solve. Another area here we're talking, this is McKinsey, and these are some of the roadblocks. If you don't align AI to, strategically, you don't align it to your business goals, you're going to have issues. So what you see here is a chart that shows the highest performers, those businesses that perform best. These are the things they do. They invest in talent. So some of the roadblocks are where you don't actually invest in that talent and training, where you don't collaborate across different business functions, where you don't have protocols and standards in place. So they're some of the main sort of areas, and the companies that do that very well tend to be the high performing organizations. Some other roadblocks or other areas that are holding back that AI implementation. One is increased vulnerability and that feeling that this is really going to disrupt my business. Or in many cases, a lack of adequate regulation. And for some, it's that issue of potential bias and potential lack of transparency that's causing them to delay their implementations. Another roadblock for many organizations is finance. How do I fund it? Do I have the right budget? And what I really wanted to share here is one solution to that, not specifically the University of Surrey. I've named that here as an example, but there are certainly UK-wide, and I do a lot of work internationally as well. There are grants, voucher schemes, funds, and this is an example where an organisation that has a particular project, they've got a problem, a genuine problem they're trying to tackle, they can work with a PhD student at a university like this and get 5, 10, sometimes more £1,000 as part of an innovation voucher. So I know all countries have got these investments, and they have their equivalent of the UK's industrial strategy. So, do your research and find out what resources are actually available to you. So what I want to cover off now is the actual action plan. And I'm sharing with you in this slide here, my scorecard for success, which we use in the Academy training. And it's based on all of the research from the book. And it starts, these are not in number 1 to 10, they're equally important, but number 1 is that mindset. As a management team, it's teaching people to have the right mindset, to have that vision and that openness and that flexibility. Number 2 is having the buy-in from the board, making sure that they are comfortable, that they're driving things forward. Number 3, like my point a few moments ago, what's the business case? Make sure you're not just deploying AI very tactically, but that you have a business case in mind. 4 is proof of concept, proof of value, that need to do experimentation. 5 is collaborating with other departments. We're in this session talking about sales, marketing, CX. All of those departments, including HR and others, need to be collaborating. 6 is talent. You need to keep upskilling and reskilling, and that's where the Academy can actually help you. You need to be on this journey of continuous learning, to have the resources, and you might be outsourcing your AI, you might be retraining, rehiring, and so on, but you absolutely do need to keep learning and understanding how you're going to be implementing it. 7 is important, it's your culture. Do you have that outward looking culture, the fairness? Do you recognize the what's in it for me for all of your different stakeholders? 8 is about innovation, agility, openness, planning for disruption. 9 is a subject very close to my heart, and it's about the impact on the wider community. It talks about ethics and explainability. It's about compliance and vigilance and so on. So that's really, really important. And then 10 is that roadmap. It's having that strategic plan in place, knowing the success criteria, having the authority, and so on. And then what you do, and we would take you through this in a proper training session, is give yourself a score of 0 to 5 out of each of those 10 areas. And then you're really scoring under 20 if you're quite traditional, in the middle, 20 to 35, more transitional, and then 35 plus, much more transformational. So that's really, really important. How to, let's think about how do we actually get started. So based on that scorecard, we'd be developing a plan, probably part of your 3 or 5 year plan, but it needs to also be a short-term plan. So let's think about what that looks like for the next 6 months. Are there new behaviors you need to display? Do you have new processes you need to get involved in? Perhaps you need a watching brief on your competitors or on a particular tool. So go away and research a particular tool. For example, Einstein, Adobe's one of Adobe's tools. It could be one of the tech disruptors that I'm going to be sharing with you shortly. Thinking about how you actually collaborate with your other departments and then doing that all important proof of concept. There's some of the ways that in the short term you can actually get started. So in terms of a flow chart, it's adopting that progressive AI mindset, recognizing a problem in your company that you think AI can actually solve, determining where that belongs, planning how to incorporate AI into it, sourcing the talent, training, and so on, coming up with a proof of concept. And then once you know that's working, or you're tweaking it, you're iterating it, you're integrating it in to the wider mainstream company, perhaps rolling out around other departments, and then thinking about next steps. So that could be a good, simple way to actually get started in terms of applying AI to your business. Some more specific ways, perhaps optimizing and gaining some efficiencies. So in marketing, it's about leveraging smart scoring so that you can predict that customer's likelihood to connect. It might be about predictive intelligence, segmenting based on their likely future actions, automatically adapting that customer journey. And there are many tools that you can use: Phrasee, Concurred, Conversica. I'm going to come on to more of them in a moment. And then delivering that best next product or content or some kind of sales offer. And then sending the messages at the right time when that prospect is most likely to be engaging with you. Here we've got a restaurant, Japanese restaurant, and they've used AI to predict how many diners are going to be coming into their restaurant. They can look at weather patterns, tourism data, and they can predict with up to 45 days into the future with a 95% accuracy. And what that's done, it's increased their profits 5-fold and tripled their productivity. And another really important benefit is reducing food loss by 70%. So very sustainable way of doing business, very much impacting sales, CX, and marketing. All 3 of those are touching on getting involved there too. So how do you get started? Who do you turn to? Who are the leading vendors? I've mentioned 1 or 2 already. So IBM Watson, Adobe Sensei, Microsoft Azure, and others as well. But there are a whole raft of tools. And I'm thinking here's an AI marketing map for this year. And you need to go away and do your due diligence. You need to understand, what is it that I need? Is it around website design? Is it around personalization? And there will be, it's making sure that you either get a recommendation, or you have taken up references from them, or you've seen, for example, that they have won the Gartner Cool Vendor Award. Those kinds of proof points, I guess, are really, really important. Because, as you can see in this slide, which is actually an extract of a huge diagram, that it is a bit of a wild west out there. And many of the CEOs and all kinds of job functions that we train do find that it is quite scary. They don't really know where to get started, which is where we can actually help them. So, thinking about return on investment, you're likely to be committing quite a lot of money here to a project involving AI and machine learning across your marketing, across your sales. So how do you go about considering and calculating what that ROI might actually be? So one area would be to think about cost savings. Another, additional revenue. So there's been, again, lots of research on the impact of AI in actually reducing costs in some instances and increasing revenue. And certainly from a marketing point of view, both of those two come into play. It might be, for example, additional sales or a decreased spend in certain areas of the business. There might be a very specific use case that might be with regard to your customer experience, wanting to streamline that through a virtual agent, if you're an airline or if you're any kind of sector really, but that ability to think about your sector and the specific attributes. Other areas might be reducing employee hours, making them spend less time on certain processes, and actually having a higher employee engagement. Then there might be some softer benefits as well. There might be operational gains, there might be fewer errors, reducing your turnover, giving you faster access to information and to service. Productivity is another really important one. In manufacturing, we've done a lot of work in the manufacturing space. It will be about improved productivity. But ultimately, we're trying to get closer to the customer. We've got that improved customer centricity. I talked a little earlier about how the big data insights can make your marketing and your sales much more granular. And if you are able to offer if you have better knowledge of the customer, you're going to be able to give them a much better service, and that will lead to improved customer experience as well. So what we're really talking about there are detailed insights in all sorts of areas, understanding the problems that customers might have that means you can make the right kind of improvements. So that's a little bit about some of those ways of measuring that success. Some of the keys to success, if we look here at some recent research from IDC, we can see in the third one down there that actually trustworthy AI is becoming mission critical. It's becoming a business imperative. They won't move forward, some organizations, without having this in place. And so this is about overcoming that black box scenario. We need to make sure, for example, with GDPR, that the decisions made by the black box can be actually explained. And therefore, we're talking about robustness, transparency, disclosure, and so on. So we need to get consent in order to use data and then give that personalized experience. And in the fourth bullet point here, 28% of the AI and machine learning initiatives have failed. And part of that is a lack of the necessary expertise, which is why it's so vital to have that continuous training going ahead as well. So like I said, it's a journey of continuous learning. It's so important to upskill, to train. And with the book I wrote, I've been in marketing and business consulting for 30 years, but I needed to put myself out of my comfort zone and make sure that I was trained, that I had done my research, that I was continuously learning, and now book 2 is underway. So all of you need, whether you are in sales or marketing or CX, whatever your level, whatever your seniority, whatever your specific area you're involved in, we all need to keep upskilling and training. It's absolutely vitally important. And so what we would do is encourage you to go over to the AI Business Academy digital booth and check us out and see what we have to offer. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that useful, and I would certainly encourage you to get started. AI is such an exciting space, and you need to future-proof yourself for the next decade. Thank you very much for listening.